talked about is that we're increasing the accuracy. We looked at the photographs first. Now we're going to actually just be able to use some simple clipping. And the clipping, can really provide valuable information. And what we'll typically use is a 93-inch hoop. That's the circumference. And we'll turn around and we will just clip that down to about a ½ an inch in height. We'll put it all into a bag. And the formula turns into a deal where that we'll take the gross weight of the gross weight. We'll subtract the bag weight. Then we've got to take out the amount of moisture that's in grass. The greener it is, the more moisture, the drier it is, or the browner it is, the less moisture. There's a conversion chart that can be done. And then we times it by 20. And 20 is the conversion factor that takes us from grams to pounds per acre, but it's relative to the 93-inch hoop. If you're using a different hoop size, this conversion factor would be different. So in this case, for this example, if we had 255 grams total weight, 5 grams worth of bag, and if the moisture in here was about 50%, we times it by the conversion factor, and this would yield to us 2,500 pounds per acre. So now we've got an actual figure rather than, well, it looks like it's this picture or it's in between this picture or that picture. This starts to give us a little bit more accuracy with what's going on. And so in this case, what we're able to do is now we're tying the grazing cage in with what our production is on the outside. And so ultimately what we can do is we can measure what's in, we can measure what's out, we can weigh it, and we can come up with accurate information relative to how much utilization is taking place, or more importantly, how much is being left. And oftentimes with grazing, I think it's more important to think about how much you leave than how much it is that you take. And so this adds some accuracy to what's going on. On the bottom layer, on the base layer, just tactics and tools of the pyramid, we just looked at the cage inside and outside and said, okay, there's a lot gone or a little gone. In this case, we've tied some numbers to it. And so it begins to add the accuracy that we want to shoot for. The next part here is that we think about is a grazing index. How many of you really have a good way to score your grazing or your grazing management? And we've found that this grazing index is something that not only gives us a way to score our grazing management, but it helps us understand how to improve our grazing management as well. And by that, we need to think just a little bit about how grass works. And if we've got a grass plant right here that's typically in a vegetative state, phase 1 growth, or pardon me, phase 2 growth, we've got plenty of leaf surface area, and we put grazing animals in on this pasture. What we're going to do is this plant is ultimately going to be grazed. And within a short amount of time, if we're dealing with fast growth, in a fairly short amount of time, in just hours, the plant is triggered. It says, oh, I've got a big-time haircut here, and I don't have enough leaf surface area to recapture more sunlight, so I need to use energy from underground so that I've got a way to go ahead and begin to put leaves up. And so we'll see that the roots begin to pull energy from the lower part of the plant into the upper part so that it can begin to ultimately get its leaves out. Well, in this case, the leaves are out, but the roots haven't recovered yet. And so what we've got to do is we need to make sure that the plant is fully recovered, and that recovery takes place below ground. That's the last place that recovery takes place. And we want to make sure that those roots have recovered. And so in this case with fast growth, we've gone through this just grazed state. Somewhere between 7 and 14 days it will take for the lower part of the plant, the roots, to transfer energy into the plant. It will take another maybe 7 to 14 days for those leaves to come out, and then probably another 7 to 14 days for the roots to be rested and recovered and recharged. And so that total recovery time might range from somewhere 21 to maybe 45 days. Now, if we go to slow growth, where things are drier, we might just have it just grazed, and it might take 20 days to maybe half a year for this plant relative to drought or growing conditions for the roots to actually begin to transfer energy back. And it might take another 60 to another 100 days for the leaves to come out. And then ultimately it might take another 60 to 100 days for the roots to be recovered as well. So we might, in this case, with slow growth or drier conditions, we might be looking at 140 to maybe over a year. In some cases, I've seen rangelands that require 2 years of rest for them to actually recover. So this is one of those things that we have to say, it depends so much on where we sit relative to moisture, where we sit relative to growing conditions, but understanding that you're really managing the roots in your grazing program is the big deal there. And once we begin to understand that, what it allows us to do is start looking at this grazing index. And I'm just going to go ahead and discuss some of these areas